How is everybody doing? And welcome back for another Strength Chat episode. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest. Former professional rugby player. He's played over 300 times for Sale Sharks. Today, I am joined by the one and only Ross Harrison. How are you doing?
I'm very well, sir. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you very
Good,
much.
good, good.
Thanks a lot for taking the time to jump on. But I suppose the first question is, yeah, how are you? What's been happening in your world recently?
Yeah, so when will I finished up now? Retired from professional rugby about 6 months ago. Started my online performance and performance coaching style business, PT in my own time, and I'm part time at the minute, Sale Sharks S&C.
All right, cool. So plenty of stuff. Has there kind of been, was it like straight into that? Did you have like a little bit of a downtime afterwards, or how did
Yeah,
that kind of go?
so basically, I've seen the writing was on the wall. I never really had an injury through my career. Got a bit of a hamstring situation going on, had a repair, sort of seen the writing was on the wall as it started to unravel, decided, had a conversation with my missus, didn't really want to chase rugby anymore because I've been at Sale my whole career. So for me, obviously I've got two young girls, so I'd have to move away and it was it was a decision for the family really. And I was kind of at ease with it really. Wasn't a bad decision. So I was like, right, okay, what am I going to do? So I started having coffees with basically everyone I knew on a Wednesday afternoon, grab two coffees a week. And then my missus said to me, she was like, you got a few mates who do online coaching, like, why don't you obviously try it? Like, you pretty much do it anyway. You've been around the block. First thing that comes to your head is I've not got the credentials. I've been to uni, yeah, but not in sports science or anything like that. And she was like, I had a few more conversations with S&Cs at Sale, and they were like, yeah, we'd love to have you on board. Um, but still, you still got it's just a bit of imposter syndrome, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I've played professional rugby. I get what it's about, but how can I teach people how to be strong? And like, well, you taught yourself. You've done it. You've proved it. So just give it a crack. So I started with friends and family. Did a few 3 months trials, and then it kicked off. I launched that when I finished, and then we were lucky enough to go to Portugal for a month when I finished. So finished there, and basically radio silence. So I was I was sat there. I was thinking, right, okay, I'm gonna have to get a proper job then, whatever a real job is. I'm gonna have to get on LinkedIn, do a bit more time on there, and then all of a sudden, people started jumping on, and it just went from strength to strength. We've got over 60 clients now with Team 301, and it's just building on that. And it's been brilliant. To be fair, being your own boss is great. Programming for people, helping people on, like seeing the transformations in people has been great. And then whilst this was all happening, Sale offered me a part-time role as an S&C. And at first I was like, I don't want to just carry on for Sale, like Sale, if you know what I mean. Like, I know some of the lads, it might be awkward, and they were like, right, we'll just try it out for pre-season. So I did 2 days a week for pre-season, and then I just carried it on with a view to possibly go full-time. But obviously I've got my online stuff at the same time. So to be fair, they've been brilliant with me. And obviously, I'm the second most experienced of Sale Sharks, so they've done their best to stand by me, which I'm more than grateful for. It's been absolutely brilliant, and the fact that they've like kept me in the loop, kept me in the door, it's gone strength to strength. And with the office as well. Sorry to take a bit of a tangent, but the
No.
office I'm in, the S&C coaches, there's like over probably 100 years S&C experience in there. So if I've got any clients or any questions, I just like literally in the morning, I just sit there and I kind of just like approach the room, and then I get like five different answers from all different styles, and I'm like, they're like, why don't you read this? Why don't you do that? Blah blah blah. And I'm like, yeah, sound. So it's been one of the best decisions I've done, and it's kept me in the loop with rugby. Obviously, finishing rugby straight away is like pretty daunting, but to stay in the loop is it's been brilliant.
Yeah,
Really enjoyed
definitely.
it.
And as well, like I know for me, because moving over to Thailand, there was kind of like 2 months, maybe just under 3 months, where I was just kind of doing online and just got dotting around gyms and just training, trying to build up a little bit of a network. Obviously, never been to Thailand before, and I think it can be kind of like isolating, maybe doing online, but when you start speaking to other coaches especially
Yeah.
coaches with a little bit more experience, it can be like, oh yeah, I've never thought about that, and it kind of keeps that momentum going. How have you found kind of, and again, this might be a little bit of a tangent, but how have you kind of found managing kind of like your own schedule I can imagine for
Yeah.
a long time it was kind of like, right, Ross, this is what you're doing, this is what your
Yeah.
days and your weeks look like. Was that quite a hard adjustment? I know you've said there it's been like it's quite good kind of, working for yourself, or has that been a little bit of a challenge or something that you've had to work on?
Yeah. So to be honest with you, when I finished, I got one of the lads put me in touch with. I think it's Blueprint. I can't remember the name of his business. Sorry, Josh Fletcher, great guy. Um, Former S&C, finished S&C, and became a sort of like a transition coach. So I used him for about 2 months, about an 8-week program. We'd meet once a week, would be in contact, and he kind of kept me accountable. And one of his big things is that I use quite a lot is like time blocking. So me, I would literally just train all day. Like I'd train in the morning, have a few hours off, eat. I'd still be a professional athlete. And he was like, right, that's great. Like obviously you're an advertisement for your business, but at the same time you kind of need to do some work. So I'd block out 2 hours because again I struggle to concentrate for more than 2 hours, and like I'm all about maximizing the time. So if I can do 2 hours, sat at the laptop, banging out whatever I'm doing, programming, reading, videos, all that sort of stuff. I'd probably have a break, maybe training there somewhere, and then I'd probably jump on again for 2 hours, another break, go pick the girls up, stuff like that. So time blocking for me has probably been the best advice since finishing. Sort of getting that schedule, even for the week, because then stuff does change, but at the same time you kind of got like a rough guideline.
Yeah.
Um, and for me, that's been massively helpful, just getting that time blocked out.
Yeah, I think, and imagine if you've got like, I can't remember the phrase or where I read this from, but if you've got a task to do and you know you've got a massive amount of time to do it,
Million
you'll
percent.
end up just being like, oh, I'll do
Doom
this.
scrolling, or yeah, I'll do it later,
Yeah,
or I'll start in 10 minutes because I'm really bad for it. If I need to be somewhere for like 8 o'clock, I won't. I'll be like, oh, I need to set off at 10 to 8. I won't get ready until 10 to 8. I need to like right. I need to leave at 20 to 8. So I've got to prepare myself for that because
Yeah.
I'm terrible for being thinking I've got more time than I have.
Yeah, definitely. Or as well, there was something else I can't remember who I was talking to this about. Whereas it's like you've got this amount of time, and it's like, oh well, I'll just start this other job, and then that other job actually turns out to be like 30 minutes. It's like, oh well, I could have just done this.
Yeah, yeah,
I know you chatted about there about blocking out time for your training, eating, and then
yeah,
doing whatever throughout the day. And I suppose the kind of like main topic of the episode is because from the outside looking in, it's kind of like how what does your training look like as a professional athlete?
yeah,
How much do you put in? How much is kind of like just like organized or done, from pre-season in season? Whereas speaking to you now at this transition point where it's like you've still had that experience for such a long time compared to like now it's like, right, okay, I'm gonna keep up with my training. But what's kind of been what did that that time at Sale, what does that training look like? Did that change over time from when you first started? Did you always think that you were just gonna learn something from the coaches, or did you do stuff outside of that? How did
yeah,
how
yeah.
did kind of like training and all of that stuff look like?
Yeah. So obviously playing prop forward, strength is like one of your main skills, really. Obviously rugby is very important, but being strong is vital. And it's something that I've always had a massive interest in. So from being young, I'd always read like muscle and fitness magazines. I was massive into Westside Barbell, even from being young, like watching their old school YouTube videos, like Ronnie Coleman, all these sort of people, massive influences for me. So being strong has always been like a passion of mine and like something that I've taken a great interest in. So becoming a professional rugby player basically allowed me to do that full time
Yeah,
whilst playing rugby, if that makes sense.
yeah,
And then obviously having great S&C coaches at Sale who I now work with, like Rick Swaby, John Kirkpatrick, people like this. I'd always be picking their brains and like seeing where I can get more. And I was always a guy who I would always do more. Probably looking back, I always did a bit too much. As when you get older, you kind of realize that training, it does matter, but the game is what really matters.
Yeah.
So when you're in that, when you got the blinkers on and you're like, I need to train, blah, blah, blah. So I sort of had like a checklist in the week where I'd be like, right, okay, I need to train my neck twice a week, uppers, lowers, blah, blah, blah. Looking back, I was probably like, well, no, sometimes just listen to your body a bit more and peak for the weekend. So a typical week for me would have looked like I would do a lower body lift as soon as possible, and probably on the Monday after the game. Upper body lift, probably day off, but I'd usually, depending on training, I might add a little bit of off-feet con in there. Just because I always wanted to be as fit as I could as well. Like strength and fitness go hand in hand, especially for rugby, because you got to be as fit as you can, especially for a loose head. It's a massive advantage to be fitter because you have to get through a lot of work as well as scrummaging. I was always a big advocate for doing a little bit extra off-feet con. And then we'd probably, if the game was on Friday, we'd do captain's run and then we'd play Friday. But if the game was Saturday, I'd probably put another full body lift in there somewhere. Not super heavy, just for more like density, getting that like muscle density in there. And like a big thing for me as well, being a prop, was I never wanted to have a weakness.
Yeah.
So for example, you see it all the time, and you'll see it all the time. You get people coming in the gym and they've got like a 130 bench, 140 bench, which is pretty decent. Like rep it out, and you're like, okay, that's fine, right? Let's get under the squat bar, and they'll be like squatting 60, 70 kilos, like bad form. Like, oh, I never really trained legs. I'm like, yeah, you kind of need to get the full picture. So a big thing for me was like never having a weakness. I wasn't the strongest, but I was always good at everything. When I first turned up to Sale as well, I was probably the other way. I wasn't very fit, and we did a fitness test, which was for 1,200 meters, and I was way off the pace. I tell the story all the time, and that was like my initial like, okay, right, I need to be fitter. Yeah. So I always had that in the back of my mind. So as a rugby player, my best advice is try and don't have any weaknesses. Like you need to be good at all the lifts.
Yeah. And you mentioned there, having the S&C coaches around you, and you said there about, doing, maybe a little bit extra or too much. How much kind of like kind of direction or kind of like, I don't want to use the word like control, but how much did they kind of say, did they end up like pulling you back a little bit, or were they kind of like, yeah, you can do this, but you got to work in these parameters? Because sometimes you think like, within pre-season, you see people going and working with maybe speed coaches or anything like that, and going and trying to, bring up those areas that they've maybe been told about. But how does that actually work, in the real world, where they're like supportive and just kind of giving you parameters to work on?
Yeah, so obviously, like it's about keeping you safe, isn't it? Like you need to be fit for the weekend. At the end of the day, you're an asset to the club. So technically, you could kind of do whatever you want to the point of it's fine until it's not fine.
Yeah.
Which isn't right or wrong, because these guys are experts and you should always listen to them. But in the back of my mind, I was always like, oh, I'll just do this, I'll just do that. And to be fair, that's how I got injured the last time I got injured in the gym. It was my own fault. And that was kind of like the moment where I was like, okay, maybe you don't know everything. Maybe sometimes science is better than feeling. Because as a professional rugby player, you've always got that carrot in front of you, and like, especially when the pressure's on, you're like, I need to do this, I need to do that. But then sometimes it's just listen to the experts. And that is probably one of my biggest takeaways from the end of my career. I actually started to do, towards the end of my career, a bit of grappling, because I got injured a few times and I was coming back and I just didn't feel fit. And I was like, I need to get that sort of like body contact. And I've got a good friend of mine who's got his own gym just around the corner from where I live in Trafford Way. And he was like, "Why don't you just come in and just try it? Like, if it's too reckless, it's too dangerous, whatever, just get rid of it." But he's like, "Just there's a few good lads in here who know what they're doing, so why don't you just jump in?" So obviously I jumped in, and then I ended up doing a few sessions a week whilst I was coming back from injury, and then I'd just try and do like one session a week, maybe just more like wrestling conditioning sort of thing. And you can do it really safely. It's more about partners and like looking after you. So they say like look after your toys. Like if you break your toys, you've got no one to play with.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's just not being reckless and being controlled. But honestly, the transfer fitness wise from grappling to rugby is massive, and I think it's something that you kind of tried to do in the past with rugby, but it got a really bad rep because people were doing it really badly. If you can do it well, it has a massive transfer, but it can be done badly,
Yeah.
especially when you've got alpha male, like you got 30 alpha male rugby players in a room, and you're like, okay, go. When no one's got any technique, that's you're going to end up injured. You need to learn technique, and there is ways to filter it through, and I think there is something in that. Whether it will become more prevalent, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I was smiling to myself there. I remember, I mean, I've not played for a couple of seasons now, but when I played in back in the UK, like around Leeds, I remember, the no great level that I played at, but yeah, right, lads, we're gonna do some like wrestling, grappling, and you'd be like
Yeah,
out on you. I remember once we're out on the pitch, and it was just like, right, grab a partner. Right, you're just gonna try and get each other, like pin each other to the floor or get up off the floor, and it's kind of like, are you sure? Are you sure about this?
yeah,
But
exactly.
there's
And if
yeah,
no one's got an idea, like technique's wild, efficiency's terrible, you're not really going to get anything out of it. So the best way to do it is get someone who knows what they're doing, teach a technique, and then battle test the technique and put it into like a 6 week block. And you'd be surprised at the results you'll get at the end of the
yeah.
6 week block. There's I don't know if you know Jay Bell, who what's he grapple strong. He does a lot with
Okay,
like he does a lot with is it Hull maybe? And obviously rugby league's slightly different, but same game. Like he's an expert. They bring him in once a week, and the skills are transferable.
yeah.
So
It's similar to like what you were saying about, trying to have no weaknesses across the board and, having the bench and then going back to the squat and you doing like with anything, you can get more efficient and you can get better at it, but it's always got to kind of serve a purpose. That
yeah,
kind of goes then into how your training is now because me touching on the level that I played at and you can see a lot of academy players or people wanting to climb up that ladder looking at professionals like yourself and athletes and content out there, and it's kind of like now that you're an online coach, S&C coach, and kind of slightly outside of that as a professional, do you kind of still train the same? Do you kind of still have the same, or try and stick to the same structure? Because now, obviously, rather than being, look, you've got a game on a Saturday and you've got to plan this all out. Whereas now,
yeah,
whether you've got events coming up or anything like that, do you still that whole thing of like still train like an athlete? Because
yeah,
sometimes even people who don't play sport might be like, well, can I train like an athlete? Is that right?
yeah,
What's
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
your and with the clients that you're working with, what's kind of like your approach with that from your experience?
So the way I've always wanted to train conjugate style, West Side barbell, and being a professional rugby player doesn't really. It does transfer, but it's a lot harder. And I think a lot of S&Cs are scared of that. All right, we're maxing out, which it's something that's misconstrued in maxing out. Like it's not actually, as you know, might know, it's like not actually a max out. Like technique breaks
Yeah.
down if the person's uncomfortable, if the weight's too heavy, like it's not safe. So it needs to be deemed safe, and it's a max out for that day. So it's 90% plus of that day from the conditions you are, the fatigue you're taking in, stuff like that. So I've sort of committed to that now. So I train upper body, lower body, max effort. So that'll be. I tend to do. I sort of stole it off Matt Wenning, so it's like the Wenning warm up. So I kind of pick three exercises to start off, which will be posterior, general like exercise. So usually reverse hyper because I love the reverse hyper. I then go into a posterior, more isolated exercise. So I probably do banded hamstring curls as it's a bit of a weakness for me. And then I'd probably do a core or a carrying exercise, and that would be my warm up. Keep them all about 7 out of 10. Um, Nothing too strenuous, just kind of warming up the body. Do 2 to 3 rounds, keep the reps high. So another thing as well that I noticed whilst I was playing rugby is that rep range, like 25 reps plus, isn't kind of hit. And it's something that I started to do quite a lot that I found had a massive like crossover for like obviously a bit of like body conditioning in there, but for like injury prevention, so like for calves, hamstrings, lower back, things that take a lot of like abuse through like a rugby season. If you're constantly increasing the density of the muscle and the width of the pyramid, it's gonna cross over and almost like it's like in my head it was like a weird injury prevention thing, and I found it
Yeah.
worked. So I'd always kind of keep a higher rep range in there. I then go on into my max lift, which would be a variation of squat, deadlift, or good morning. Rotate them weekly, and then I'd chuck on 2 or 3 accessories depending on how I'm feeling. Normally a weakness. So I do that for lower body, upper body, and then I chuck in a lower body and upper body dynamic session. I always try and run once a week. I'll train neck on upper body days. And then what else did I try and do? And then I'll try and fit grappling and a bit of boxing in there as well. I try and grapple 4 times a week, which again, I've got a young family now, so it's negotiating the misses as well
Yeah,
as the business. But we kind of my missus is training for a marathon at the minute, so it's a bit of a trade off. Like I kind of have them on Sunday, she kind of has them on Saturday. So and we kind of mix it in. Like it's what you gotta do. It's like you have got to sacrifice a bit of that time just to stay in shape and do goals for yourself, push yourself on. So my week's still pretty busy, and I'd probably say I still am training as a professional athlete. But it's trying stuff out as well, a bit more like imaginative now. Like and also another thing is I kind of stick to a structure a bit more now I'm retired because
right. Okay.
which is weird because I get yeah, which is probably what I was doing wrong, but I always got a bit bored, and I still do. But at the same time now, I can focus more on the numbers because I'm not so tired and I'm not got the weekend to care about, so I can like
Yeah.
focus a bit more on beating my numbers, progressive overload through the weeks in blocks and stuff like that. Whereas when I was playing, I was always had the game in the back of my mind. I was like, maybe I should pull back here, or maybe
Yeah.
I'm retired from the game. I can't really do that this week, or I'm carrying a knock. Whereas now, like the shackles are off. I kind of just experiment on myself, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And that's like an interesting because like you do think like what you said there, in the back of your mind. I think you said this right at the start, like ultimately it's, how you perform, like you want to perform on a Friday, a Saturday or a weekend, whatever it is from there.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
flipping it more to kind of like for your coaching, obviously, there might be people there that it's like right that they want that structure and it's like right this is how we're gonna tie it in with your games. Whereas
yeah,
now on the flip side of that, you've said there, a young family working, like for a lot of people listening, that's like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm
yeah,
trying
yeah,
to fit in. How was that kind of maybe helped your coaching or kind of like that relatability a little bit because you've kind
yeah,
of got like those two experiences there, which for the people that are looking like bloody hell, yeah, he's got like he's played professional rugby, played over 300 games, like he must have a good idea. But then on the flip side of it, you've got other people that are like, yeah, I do want to perform, I do want to get in shape, be more athletic, and it's like, oh, he's doing that as well. How has that kind of helped your coaching and kind of getting results with your clients?
yeah. So I personally never train over 45 minutes now. I go in the gym, I set my timer. Having a family as well, it really just it emphasizes how important time is, and it's something that I'm really focusing on the minute. Is being like obviously being present around the girls, and then when I'm not around them, it's like okay, well I'm sacrificing time. Um, so is that time worth sacrificing? And that's the decision you've got to make before you start the session. So as soon as I walk in the gym, start my timer 45 minutes, I'll have an alarm that go off, and I've got a chunk of work that I need to get through. And if I don't get through it, then 45 minutes is up. Then that's it. So when I'm creating sessions for people on the program, so I have a lot of rugby players, a lot of amateur, semi-professional rugby players. I have a lot of grapplers. I have a lot of dads, and then I have a lot of mums as well. So that all goes into the programming. So what I kind of do is I'll over program for them. Um, so I'll give them 6 or 7 days a week training, but you can cherry pick from there. So I always say to them, try and get your 3 weight sessions in, and then any extra conditioning, any extra things like that, and that's great. You fit them in, but not to the detriment of your, first of all, energy levels, and second of all, like your personal life, your business life, and your family life. And then I also pass over like non-negotiables. So obviously, dietary requirements, hitting macros weekly, very important. Movement. The amount of people who come to me and are like, "Oh, I do 3,000 steps a day." I'm like, that is not okay. Like,
Yeah.
you need to be hitting 10,000 steps minimum a day, and you'll, even just doing that for a month, you'll see a massive difference in your life. Um, Water is a big one. So I say 1 liter per 25 kilos, so 100 kilo man, 4 liters a day, pretty non-negotiable. And then sleep. A big one for me is people sleep 7 to 9 hours sleep a night. When I was in my peak playing, I was getting 10 hours. We used to call it Olympic sleep. I've seen JJ Watt talk about it. And at 10
Yeah.
hours sleep, I'd go to bed at 8, like just to get the hours in. But the amount of people who have shit, obviously, if you've got small kids and stuff, it's really hard. But you've got to get a nap in, or you got to try and top it up, because if you get movement, food, water, and sleep all correct, as a human, stuff tends to get better and fall into place. So I think once people understand that, and I've shown them that after the first month, I call them the big rocks. I
Yeah.
don't know if you, like in a jar, like you get the big rocks done right first, and then we'll put the gravel in, and then we'll put the sand in. But get the big rocks right first. The 4 big rocks of sleep, movement, food, and water. Once we got that in, stuff just kind of gets better. So that is something that I push really hard, and I also like to educate people as well. Like, it's not just, I don't want it to get misconstrued that it's sort of like a transformation, like a 3 month transformation. Like, I get you ripped and then send you on your way. Like, because anyone can do that, and by the end of the 3 months, you're miserable. Like, anyone who's ripped is pretty miserable. Like, I've been there. Like, I've been down to like 105 kilos, like shredded, and yeah, it's great. You look mint, and within 2 days of your holiday, you're not ripped anymore, because it's so hard to, it is so hard to hold. And like, people need to understand that you don't need to be shredded, but as long as you're in touching distance of in shape, within 5 or 10%, like there's no reason why you shouldn't be in that sort of shape day to day. It gives you a bit more wiggle room on food, like eating out, things like that. And once I've seen people and educated them, and I've got them shredded with reverse dieted, and then they're in a good place with it, that's where I want people to get. I want people to have like a really good relationship with being healthy, eating well, sleeping right. All these things come together, and people's lives get better. And I've seen it; it's class. I really, that's probably the side that I've enjoyed most. Is like, not just I've done transformations that are fine, but seeing people like actually change their lives, like, is mad, and it's something that I really enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. I thought it was good that you said there about like the 10 hours of sleep because yeah, we've spoken about, training, how your training would look, how your week would look, but I think that's the yeah, I want people to, work hard when they are training, depending on how much time they've got. But the training part is actually sometimes the easy bit, whereas all the things that you've said there, like sleep, water, that sort of stuff, all of a sudden, when people start feeling better, all of a sudden their performance, whether that's, on a Saturday or in the gym,
Yeah,
all of a sudden that's going to improve, especially over here. Like with water, obviously I'm drinking water
yeah, yeah,
here, but like electrolytes and everything, and because where I'm working at the minute is like people can come over for like a fitness retreat. So you can come over for like a week, or you can come over for like I think the longest there was an American guy. He was here for like 4 months, and just
legend.
kind of was like, yeah, he was just like he was a really really cool guy. To be fair, he was from Hawaii. I've never met anyone from Hawaii.
Wow,
I
sick.
thought
Yeah,
that was
yeah,
pretty cool. To be fair. But I remember at one point he was kind of just like he was trying to eat like the bare minimum. He wanted to like train at this level and eat at this level. And
yeah.
like he said, "Oh, I've lost this amount. I've lost this amount." And then I remember he rocked up to a session, and he was just like, honestly. I could have dragged him around gym. That's
Yeah,
how tired he was. And I was, what you been eating? He said, oh, well, I've just been trying to have like protein, some shakes, and like a little bit of fruit. I was like, get some rice, like get
fuck
some
yeah.
potatoes in
I
you.
think you had the worst diarrhea ever
Oh
for
yeah, absolutely, especially with some spicy food over here. But I was just like, get some of that, and all of a sudden, he's kind of like, because that's the other, and this might be a rabbit hole to go down a different time. But people are like, they're not eating to perform.
Mate.
They think that they need to not have as much. And it's kind of two questions from from what you were chatting about there. Number one would be, from your being with the sale and the food that you're eating, has eating habits changed? Are you eating more, less, or different? And then I suppose the second part to that is, to play the amount of games that you did. I know obviously you mentioned about your hamstring and everything, but how did you kind of, look after your body to be in the position that you're in now, so you're still training, and you mentioned there about having your body, and being healthy. How have you kind of like looked after your body from there? Has it been nutrition, recovery,
Yeah, yeah,
rehab,
yeah.
anything like that? What's kind of, or prehab even, what's kind of like your take on the nutrition and kind of like looking after your body side of things?
Yeah, so we'll start with nutrition. So from being a kid, my mum has always been massive into she's like a holistic therapist, so she's pretty like wacky, but she was always into like you are what you eat. So even from being a kid, like if she'd always make everything from scratch. Everything was from like we got a local farm, like I wouldn't even say it's a farm shop, it's just like a mate who's got like a small hole. So it'd always be like homegrown food, like chickens that I'd seen running around. And then it's something that I've taken away and always try to stick to, obviously, as much as possible. This is something that gets a little bit misconstrued as well with this new, like, no ultra processed food stuff, which is great, but sometimes it's really hard, especially when you're an athlete and you're like, if I've got a bunch of bananas, they're not going to last longer than a day in my bag. Like, it's not possible, but a Squares bar is going to last a long time. Not ideal, but at the same time, a Squares bar is a brilliant like block of energy. Like an hour before a game, you can't get much better. So I always try to eat from scratch and good quality food. It's something that I got really into, like monitoring my food, maybe a bit too much at one point in my career, where I was counting a lot, and it was a bit too much. But doing that counting and tracking sort of gave me the ability to eyeball food a lot better. So I'd always be able to look at a plate and be like, all right, okay, I've got 50 grams of protein on this plate. I've got enough carbs. I've got enough vegetables. I always try and have two. We try and make the rainbow on the plate, so two variations of vegetables. I always try to eat a lot of sweet potato and potatoes rather than rice and pasta. Whether that was right or wrong, it was just something that felt right for me. But yeah, diet was massive for me all the way through my career. Like I was into like eating livers and like roasting bone marrow and stuff like that way before like Liver King. I'm
Yeah,
gonna take that one. I'm the original Liver King.
yeah. The
But
real liver
like,
king. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
What
but
was
like
actually
eating,
funny? I was actually chatting to my mate about it actually. So he's emigrating to Australia. His visa got approved. So basically, he stopped off in Thailand. We had New Year's together, and then he was going over to Australia.
yeah,
And we were chatting before, and because we lived together in Leeds, I don't think it would even cost that much now. But we'd basically go to Leeds Market. I think it was 20 quid, and you got 5 kilos of chicken. But we'd always take like an extra fiver, and because the
yeah,
butcher's got to know us, he'd be like, "Oh, do you want some liver? Do you want some of this? Want some
yeah,
of that?"
yeah.
And I always
And it's
remember we were cooking this liver in like the house share that we were in, and other people that walked in was like, "What are you cooking?" I was like, "We've got some liver." But I remember my mum cooking like liver, onions, and mashed potato,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it being banging. And as well, like you
yeah.
actually look at the like nutritional value from it. It's actually like one of the best things that you can eat.
And like I wasn't tanning it or anything, but I'd get it in like once every 2 weeks or something like that,
Yeah,
just because it obviously it's cheap and it's great nutrition value. One thing I kind of got into more fuel in the body as I got a bit more experience as well. Like looking back now, I feel my body a lot better now than when I did as a player. I always had in the back of my mind that I don't know why I got to the stage where it was probably pretty bad, really, where the stage where I was like, I don't really want to eat that because it might affect my performance. When really you need to look at food as fuel. I've got a few like girls at the minute and men who are on marathon prep, and they're like, oh, it's quite a lot of calories and stuff like that. And I'm like, you're running half marathon at least every week from the last 6 weeks of your program, so you need to be fueling like someone who I really like. I don't know if you've seen it. She's called Kelsey Pulser, maybe on
Yeah,
on
yeah,
Instagram. She puts it in such like layman's terms and makes it so easy that it's just like, okay, that makes sense. And people need to be aware of that. That for a game, you need to be eating carbs, like a lot of carbs, the night before, leading up to the game, and then so like 2 hours before. So she does like 4-2-1-0. So it's like 4 hours before a meal with a bit of everything, fats, protein, carbs. And then 2 hours before a heavy carb meal, 1 hour electrolytes and water, and then 0 hours out, you have like um a gel every 40 minutes or something like that. And it's something that I picked up now. I will probably fuel a lot better for like a 90-minute grappling session or wrestling session than I did for an 80-minute Premiership rugby game, which is berserk.
yeah,
But it's something that you learn over time, and you're like, I actually feel meant. Or something that I should bring up though is obviously as a professional rugby player, you've got to be careful like what you take, and everything has to be informed sport. I don't know if you're like everything has the informed sport stamp, which
yeah,
is
yeah,
great and keeps rugby clean and everything like that. But in the back of my mind, I was like, I don't really want to take a carb drink or a Lucozade or something like that because not informed sport, which is probably the wrong mentality. But when your career's hanging over a piss test, like you don't want to be messing around with that. So I was kind of that was always in the back of my mind that I wanted to eat like the cleanest, best food possible because I didn't want any cross contamination.
yeah,
Which is probably probably borderline a bit crazy, but at the same time, like it is in the back of your mind. And for rugby players, like there needs to be something done there. I think maybe a bit more education to players or education to supplement companies, things like that. But it was always like something in the back of my mind.
yeah. From what you've said there, like you said about you were maybe counting a little bit too much at one point, or
Mm.
at one point being like, oh, I don't know whether I want that. Do you think that again, this might be a little bit of a tangent, but do you think that's kind of a natural thing to happen, whether professional athletes or the everyday person, if you like, to get to that point? Because then that way you know what kind of, because I always think things as like a spectrum. At one end, you've got yeah, I'm going to do this, or nothing at the other end, and then you find the middle point, which is like
Yeah,
something that you can do consistently enough. Do you think that's something that people have to go through to then learn those lessons to be like, yeah, well, actually, I now know, like what you were saying, I now know what 50 grams of protein is. I don't need to do that again, but I don't really want to go back to having that like super, oh, I need
yeah.
to do this. And do you think that's kind of like a natural thing
Million,
to happen?
million percent. So I was always quite a fat kid. So in the back of my mind, like as a rugby player, I didn't want to be fat, which isn't right again. But at the same time, it was something that I always kept an eye on and tried to stay in reasonably good nick. So yeah, counting is to get shredded. You have to count. Like you can't just eyeball. Like to get in really good nick, you have to count calories. But on the flip side of that, it's not sustainable. It's very difficult. Like it's very unsociable. You have to live like a hermit. You have to have food prepped. You have to have constantly be looking for your next meal. You constantly have to be weighing stuff. Like I've got obviously the twins and Lucy, my missus, and if I'm making dinner, I'm making a separate meal because I need to know what's in that meal.
Yeah.
Which like yeah, it's right, and some people might need to do that, but is it sustainable? No, I don't think so. But to get to the stage where you can eyeball a meal and understand what portions control looks like and things like that, then yeah, it is important for people and do it for 2 to 3 months to get in shape first of all, but then to understand food is very important. But yeah, on the other side of that, it's grim. Like it's just relentless because a meal you just want to sit and eat, but then you're like, I've got to weigh this, got to weigh that. But you can do it as well. Like, so there are ways to do it where a good ways to do it is just count your protein. and then just make sure all the carbs and fats you're eating are from a good source, and it kind of everything falls into place. Because a lot of people that come to me really undereat on protein,
Yeah.
and then when I send over how much protein you actually need to eat, which is around I think it's like a gram per pound of body mass or 1.25. Um, it's a lot, and people are like, "Oh my God, that's so much protein." I'm like, "Yeah, because you're in a calorie deficit. You need to be lifting weights and eating protein. They're the two things that are going to protect your muscle. So get it eaten. Do you know, you know what I mean? Like find
Yeah.
ways to make it easy. So like a really good one that I say to people is like low fat Greek yogurt. Like in a tub of Greek yogurt, low fat, it's like 50 grams of protein. Mental. Cottage cheese, low fat cottage cheese, 25 grams per pot. Like these are just really easy ways to get high protein in. They're almost like cheat codes because you can have them on the go and stuff like that. When you're at the services, they usually have Greek yogurt or they usually have cottage cheese in there. Like you can make good options on the move and keep you accountable whilst you're traveling, which is really difficult for some people.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned them because they're a lot of the things that that I've recommended. The only thing I can't get, and I've never been able to get away with it. I used to get pots that were like cottage cheese and pineapple. I could never get away with them. I'd rather just have like the just a plain cottage cheese.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
When
No, I get
you
it.
Yeah, when you say about protein though, and I don't know about you, but sometimes you're like, right, this is the amount of protein that we need to eat. All of a sudden, people think, all right, I need to be eating like 4 steaks a day. I need to be having this. Whereas, like from what you've said there, they're not that kind of like outlandish compared to what you would eat normally. It just takes that little bit of thought,
Yeah,
and even like. So to kind of like, because I'm a big fan of having like a little bit of like daftness when you're talking to people, and I'm
yeah,
like, well, like broccoli's got protein in, and
yeah,
actually,
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know where I found this out, but it was like tender stem broccoli has like a little bit more protein than normal broccoli. So I was
yeah,
like, number one, you're getting protein in, and number two, people will think you fancy because you got tender stem broccoli
yeah, yeah, yeah.
rather than normal broccoli, and I think things like that. When you're speaking about it, especially from yourself saying that as what you've done, it's not as yeah. There's going to be challenges, around family life, work, traveling, but there are solutions there. It's just kind of
Yeah.
like about making those choices.
It's
Um,
just sorry, it's just not. It's just like not eating like a toddler. Like some people
yeah,
just grow up, not even grow up a bit. Just understand what your body needs. And sometimes like it sucks, but like just get over it and eat it. Like it's going to make you
yeah,
feel better. And I think once people have tried it for like 3 to 4 weeks, the penny drops, and it's like okay, right. So eating a Greg's pasty and a protein shake for my food for the day probably isn't ideal and isn't doing me no good. But like I've got an athlete at the minute who he lives off biscuits. And he's a phenomenal athlete, and I'm like, yeah, that's fine. You're eating biscuits and stuff, but and you think that's like you should be fat off that. But if you actually added up the calories of how many calories are in those biscuits you're eating, you're probably having one meal a day plus a pack of biscuits. That's probably 1,200 calories a day. That's like nothing. And then probably 20 grams of protein, which is, you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
you can have your biscuits on the side and stuff like that, but just get three good meals in at 50 grams, 40 grams, and all of a sudden you've got 150 grams of protein a day there. And then if you add a few snacks in, you're up to 200. Like there's easy ways to make things happen. It's more educating people than anything. Like obviously, being a professional rugby player, it was my job to know these things almost. Not your job
Yeah.
to know them, but you got educated along the way. And I just don't think there's enough out there for people. Like obviously in schools and stuff. Like I seen something that Matt does fitness put up the other day, which I thought was brilliant. About if you're bad at maths, you get extra maths tuition, but if you're bad at sport, you just slip through the net.
Yeah.
And I actually think he's a bit of a bell, but at the same time, what he's saying there, I don't know the guy. I'm just jesting. But what he said there, I was like, mate, that's so good. That's like it should be in schools. Like, right, okay, when you leave school, you should know how to navigate a gym. You should know what a general like weight session should look like, and you should know how many hours of exercise you need to get a week, just for like standards of life. Because being a father now, like running around with the kids, if I wasn't in shape, like it'd be miserable. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's
Yeah.
just it's just standards, and it could be more done in that sense as well.
Absolutely. I actually, I think it was yesterday. He put something out about someone had just clipped a line saying he would rather his kids be like fitter than being able to read or something like that.
Yeah,
And it's
I
like with
think so.
anything,
Yeah,
like stuff like that is just clickbait. And I thought
yeah,
he was quite good because obviously, like you watch him on Gladiators and stuff, and he's got like that persona. Whereas actually how he spoke, he was like, of course I don't want my kids to not be able to read, but he
yeah,
made a good point. He was like, you find extra things for, like, I think he said something like geography and like RE, which is like, yeah, like important, but
mm,
like 20 minutes a day just doing some form of physical activity or anything like that, like,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I thought that made
And
sense.
then with that as well, like how many athletes will slip through the net? Like I, I made a living through my body, if you know what I mean. Like
Yeah.
a load more kids can do that. Like it doesn't have to. Like I'll tell you, but this is one of the when I finished rugby, my missus was like, okay, you need to send out some emails, do some of this stuff, blah blah blah. I was like, yeah, yeah, sounds. So got myself a laptop, which never had a laptop before, whatever. But I was like, oh, I'll just send an email out. So I was like, what's this guy's name, blah blah blah. So I sent it away, and she was like, why have you sent me an email? And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, oh, who you sent that email to? And I was like, the guy. And she's like, no, 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 you've sent it to me. Like, what are you doing? Like, I didn't know how to send an email, mate. Like, that's how institutionalized I was from professional rugby.
Yeah.
Like, which is berserk, but at the same time, like, it just shows that, like, school at the end of the day, like, sometimes it doesn't work for everyone. Like,
Yeah, yeah. And going on to like the second part that I said from there, obviously we said about, the nutrition side of things, but in terms of
yeah,
just like, I've said a couple of times, the amount of games that you played to be able to, and the amount of seasons that you played as well. Was that down to like what you've said there around about like the food and the planning that you had about training, or was it a case of, you spent a lot of time on like rehab, prehab exercises that get spoken about, and kind of like how's your being able to now do like more grappling? How's kind of like your body after professional rugby, because especially at the minute, people retiring, injuries, other things, kind of like post rugby.
yeah.
How did you kind of like look after your body aside from kind of like the nutrition side of things?
Yeah, so first of all, like, obviously, there's a lot of luck involved, and I'm not saying, like, sometimes accidents do happen on the rugby field, and which is horrific, and a lot of luck is involved, but there are things you can do to help yourselves. And like obviously stuff like wear and tear and stuff can be minimized. I was always, as I said, I was always massive on working on my weaknesses. So I'd probably come in after my main gym session and do like they call them like bolt-ons at sale, which would be like calves, hamstrings, like your weak points. Hit them with like almost like a West Side rep session. So it'd be like 4 sets of higher reps to failure, just to get that little bit more like general physical preparation in there, which I was kind of doing without knowing at the time. But I was always a massive advocate for recovery as well. So I'd do yoga once a week. I did hot yoga religiously once or twice a week for a long time. When the girls were born, it kind of fell off, which is kind of probably why I got injured, if I'm being honest. Because these things, like, they do fall off, and I'll try everything, and if it serves me, I'll keep it in. But if I've not got time or some stuff will get dropped. I did a lot of reformers Pilates, which I really liked because it was almost like an hour of doing stuff you don't want to do. So it was like core work, like the boring stuff that you're like, oh. But when you're in a class and someone's making it a bit more enjoyable, it's a great form of exercise. I had a sauna and ice bath at the house. So I ice bathed every morning. I saunaed every night to the point where I'd never, like 5 days, 6 days a week, I wouldn't miss a session. I stretched every day, which was again, so I was mad into mobility. I still kind of am. I've always been pretty flexible. I did a lot of martial arts as a kid, but it was something that I actually really believed in. So I try and do 8 minutes a day, mobility or stretching. But once you started doing 8 minutes, 8 minutes turns into 20 minutes, and you're like, okay, well, now I've done half an hour of mobility and I feel mint. But it was something that if I was watching telly, I'd just jump on the floor and just stretch, or if I was I had a spare hour or something like that, I'd jump in the sauna for 20 minutes, do an ice bath. Just get the contrast, hot and cold in. I was always a big fan of soft tissue as well, so I'd see a masseuse once a week. Um, what else was I big into? I used the hyperbaric chamber for a bit. Um, Very good. I actually really enjoyed hyperbaric chamber. Obviously, it's very expensive. I rented one for a bit whilst I was injured, but I found that the healing capabilities of it was very, very good. Whether it's essential, I'm not sure. I'd rank it pretty highly, but obviously it's expensive. All these things are quite expensive, but there's ways around it. Like if you join like a David Lloyd, something like that, there's a sauna and ice bath there, most of them. And then stretching costs nothing.
Yeah.
Also, a big thing as well, I alluded to at the beginning, is staying fit. I always found that people would get injured when they weren't fit or when they were at high fatigue points. So if I was able to not be fatigued or reduce fatigue through being in condition and being fit, it would hold me in good stead. So again, there's like off-feet concessions, good way to load the body without loading the joints, and just basically training the lungs and the muscles. I found really, really beneficial.
Yeah, and what I think is good about that, because especially yes, you can relate it to kind of like rugby players, but for a lot of people, those things there when people are picking up injuries or just not looking after the body. I know for me, when I stopped playing as much rugby, I started competing in like powerlifting,
Mm.
and obviously that's just the same movements all the time,
Yeah,
and what you said there about so I actually shot up the weight classes quite a lot because all of a sudden from playing rugby, the fitness side of things went down, and then
yeah.
I found as though like the amount of work that I needed to do as I got stronger, I couldn't do as much. Yeah, for like heavy singles, doubles, and triples, I could lift a lot of weight, but anytime I was trying to, I think you said it a little bit before as well, like building that base of the pyramid for kind of like your strength,
Mm.
it was amazing how kind of like how much that dropped off. Then all of a sudden you start adding that in a little bit, and it's like, all right, I can get through a lot, I can get through a lot more work now rather than doing a set and then sitting down for 5 minutes.
1,000,000%. So
And yeah,
I always find that people get injured, or through myself as well. It's either through a strength issue or a capacity issue. So either that muscle tissue isn't strong enough, or it's not used to the load that you're putting through it. Whether that be time on feet, situational, positional, things like that. So if you can train strength through all ranges at high and low reps, you're kind of covering everything in like a weird bro science kind of way. But
yeah,
it worked for me. So it was something that I had a few calf issues as I got older as well, like everyone does. But then I kind of got into training my calves more and getting them stronger, and it kind of got rid of those issues.
yeah, yeah. Similar to like the mobility, because that was one thing that I started doing a lot, probably a lot more so when I was powerlifting. Just because especially when you're just doing bench press and not doing anything overhead, all of a
Yeah.
sudden like my shoulders start hurting and all that, and like my lower back. And yeah, all those things that you said there are kind of like stretching is free, but also you said, if you've got a spare hour, a lot of these things can be like added in. Whereas like, that whole thing of if you like more what I've said to people is even if you just watch like something like I don't know why I'm thinking of Big Bang Theory, but a Big Bang Theory episode is like 20 minutes. If you watch
Yeah.
a Game of Thrones episodes, that could be like an hour and a half. Like
Yeah.
you can still sit there, whether it's 20 minutes or an hour and a half, and do something whilst you're watching something. I'm
Yeah, of
not
course you
saying you
can.
have to do it, every night if you're doing that, but there's solutions there for it. Quite a lot of topics and tangents thrown in there, Ross, but really, really enjoyed chatting with you today. The last question that I like to ask for everyone listening, whether it's coaches, athletes, the general person, what would be your take home points or words of wisdom from what we've chatted about today?
Phew. A big one is just working hard. Like whenever I went into a rugby match, I'd always think to myself, I would never go in like with like goals and stuff like that. I was like, just work hard and good things happen. And you can relate that a lot to life. if you're training hard, if you're eating right, if you're grafting, good things will happen. Just give it time, and obviously time with that. So don't waste your time, and don't be like don't waste your time. That's basically the biggest thing.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that sums up a lot of stuff that we've said. We've chatted about from there, and I think some like really useful pieces of information for people to take away. If anyone has any questions about what we've chatted about today, want to reach out to you or see the content and information that you share, where can people find you or reach out to you?
Yeah, on my Instagram, Ross Harrison at Ross Harrison FR is where I am based at the minute. So jump on there,
Awesome.
message me anytime.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Ross, for taking the time to jump on. Really, really enjoyed chatting with you today. Thanks a lot to everyone listening, and I will see you all at the next episode.
Cheers, B. Thank you.